CIUT 89.5 FM, bringing you the sound of your city for 30 years.
You're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM. This is Donna G. The show is The More the Merrier. I'm here with you until 4 o'clock today. And joining me on today's show, the focus is independent women. And I'm sort of twisting that from independent woman, which is TIFF's focus on director, producer, actress, writer, composer, Ida Lupino. The TIFF Bell Lightbox is running a retrospective of Ida Lupino's work. It's on now until September 2nd. And I'll be joined by broadcaster and lifelong cinephile Jessie Wente, who does work for the CBC as well as the TIFF Bell Lightbox, to talk about this program, Ida Lupino, Independent Woman. And since we're talking about women and independence, I'm going to be joined afterwards by Sistah Lois, who amongst her career was a heavy-duty diesel equipment mechanic. Most of you know her from her work as a performer, as a creatrix, working with children, the variously abled people to bring them into the arts and loving the arts. And she's also known previously as African Princess. So she is a singer, composer, writer, performer, actress, and she'll be talking about her own mother's love of Ida Lupino, as well as her own work as an independent artist, demonstrating the ups and downs of that career path and how challenging it can be. But a little musical break for you before I get to Jessie Wente. And this is The Day After featuring Mishi Me, and this one's called Break the Rules.
Yeah! I got no pattern to follow and I will explode. I can't stop time and I'm used to the cold. I got an alter ego, eager to rock and roll. I'll stay rocking till the bills fold. You got the fire, I got the fuel. Tonight we fight, break the rules. Hey yo, we gotta keep them cornered, leave no stone unturned. Cause that chick in the corner be the first to learn. You play with fire, you get burned. This is one case you can't overturn.
You're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM. This is Donna G, and that was The Day After featuring Mishi Me, Break the Rules. And certainly breaking the rules is something that Ida Lupino did in her day in cinema and on television. And joining me by telephone now is Jessie Wente, who is head of the programming for the Ida Lupino retrospective at TIFF, to talk about this extraordinary woman. Hello, Jessie.
Hi, Donna.
Now, for many people will not have heard of Ida Lupino previously. So can you just whet their appetite a bit and tell us why she should be remembered?
Well, Ida Lupino is actually a rather extraordinary figure in movie history. She was the only woman directing movies in Hollywood during the 1950s. She had started out as a movie star. She was in several high-profile movies opposite some of the generation's big stars, but she had found ultimately the parts she was being offered a bit lacking, and so she actually, when her contract ran out with Warner Brothers, she struck out her own, established a independent film production company called the Filmmakers, and ended up producing the types of movies she wanted to see, which were tended to be female-driven, female-led stories made for women, and that's what she did for several years before ultimately moving into television. And at the time, as I said, there was no other woman doing this in Hollywood.
What I find extraordinary about Ida is that she comes from a dynasty of people in entertainment, like over 300 years, talking about the family business, being in entertainment, and that she started so young in film. She was like 14, playing grown women.
Yeah, she was a child star, and you're right. Her family was originally from Italy, where they were live performers, and they moved to England, and her family was very well established in England for years, for decades and decades. And she came to Hollywood when she was just a young girl, and she started at 13, and she has always been known, or was very famous for playing beyond her years. She would play much older women when she was a teenager, and she always had a very mature, some might even call it later in her career, world-weary sort of quality about her. And she became, it took her a while to really to get situated in Hollywood. It wasn't really until she went into Warner Brothers that she broke out. And she, her big performance was in Raoul Walsh's Truck Driver Noir, They Drive by Night, where she had one of the great courtroom scenes in all movie history, where she just completely breaks down in hysterics on the stand, the sort of crazed testimony that is so famous in Hollywood history. And it was that performance when she was, not, I think, just into her 20s, just turned 20, that turned her into a big movie star for Warner Brothers. And that was opposite Humphrey Bogart, and he was not yet a movie star.
Right. And then, High Sierra, she was billed above Humphrey Bogart then.
Yeah, she got top billing above some of the big stars. She was very famous at that time for being able to play the classic femme fatales in film noir. And that really actually became her great calling card as an actor, was that she could play the woman who had a bit of a hard edge but was vulnerable on the inside. She played a lot of femme fatales in movies like Roadhouse, where she's just brilliant in that movie. This is the original Roadhouse, not the one with Patrick Swayze, although same idea. And she really did have that sort of world-weary or old beyond her years quality to her, and I think that made her very attractive to the directors at the time. She made several films with Raoul Walsh, and of course she could, as she played in Roadhouse, she was a triple threat. She came from a song and dance family, and she had a very, how one might describe it, Donna, cigarette and whiskey style voice for singing that was completely transportative. You were really take it away by her when she would perform, and that her introductory song in Roadhouse, I think, should be the stuff of movie legend, because it just is heart-stopping in its tenderness, its beauty, and just amazing to wonder at her talent.
And she moved her talent behind screen quite by chance in taking over the directing.
Yeah, she had to take over a film for the director who had sort of fallen ill, and that's what really got her hooked on the notion of starting a production company. This was her first film for a production company that she had to take over. She really learned the craft of directing under Raoul Walsh. Walsh was her mentor in many, many ways. He cast her in High Sierra, as you said, several of the really big pictures, and he was a classic sort of Hollywood tough guy filmmaker, had the eye patch, made really tough guy movies, and I think he really imbued in her both that sensibility, because her movies, she did make a couple tough guy movies, but also, I think, key at the time was she had a remarkable sense of economy in the way to make the movies. And, you know, at that time, Donna, in the studio, this is the height of the studio system, making your film on time, on budget was just about as important as it could possibly be in the industry. And she was able to really learn that from Walsh and then prove that with her own company, making movies. Films like, say, Never Fear, The Young Lovers, about, a ballerina, or Outrage, which is a film actually about sexual assault and rape culture, movies about things that the studios were really not making at the time. And she really took it upon herself to make those films, make films that had great roles for women, whether she was in them or whether it was her friends like Joan Fontaine or any of the other young actresses that she would employ, and was a real trailblazer, and then would continue that on in television. She directed episodes of pretty much every major TV show of the 50s and 60s, from Gilligan's Island up to Bonanza, and starred in a bunch of television at a time when, Hollywood, historically, she turned an age when Hollywood tends to struggle with what to do with women. And I think, she forged her own path, which is why I think she's such an extraordinary figure in cinema history.
Now, you're going to introduce a couple of these films, and I don't want to go in depth because I want people to definitely come out and hear you speak. But why did you choose, for example, to introduce The Big Knife?
Many reasons. The Big Knife was based on a play. This is a film starring Ida Lupino and Jack Palance, and it's a behind the studio wall sort of look at Hollywood. And it's about, stars struggling to sort of find a place, or in this case, Jack Palance, a big, huge studio star, attempting to keep his place in Hollywood. And there's a very interesting backstory, which I won't go fully into with the film. There's lots of relationships that went on behind the scenes that tell the story of the film, and very rarely, the reason I've always loved this, I think Palance is fantastic in it. Lupino is, as always, just tremendous in this film. But it is a very ugly portrait of Hollywood. And given the time, this was a movie made in the 50s, that was not necessarily the depiction always that we get of Hollywood. And it involved people who knew this story very intimately. And I think for me that was, it's a Clifford Odets play, and I think that was what attracted me to that one. I think there's a lot of interesting little tidbits and stories to tell around that particular movie.
And with her and Collier Young starting up the filmmakers, their own production company, I mean, that's in the time when the McCarthy era was like blacklisting everybody for being communist sympathizers. And here's this little independent company making these films. And I mean, she was fearless.
She was completely fearless. Absolutely. She fought with studio heads. She fought with, whoever was going to be in her way. Absolutely. She was known rather famously as Mother on on set, because that was really the persona or the sort of approach that she took to making movies and collaborating with people. And yeah, she did this at a height of real upheaval in Hollywood. And, you know, she was not the biggest star. So it's not like she was, you know, she wasn't Betty Davis. She wasn't Joan Crawford. She wasn't the biggest A-list movie star, but she had a lot to lose, and she put a lot on the line. And the output is these remarkable movies, which I think are, for me, often not seen enough, particularly the films that she directed, and particularly Donna, Outrage, which I think is really a movie very much of its time, but that has a lot to say to us now.
Yes, I mean, there was in terms of rape films, there was like Johnny Belinda, but that was sort of like an off-screen, different tone of film with Jane Wyman. Outrage is a bit more in your face in terms of the community response to this young woman being criminally assaulted, as they say throughout the film, because they can't use the word rape.
That's right, because this was post-code, so they weren't allowed to use it. And in fact, this was why she was such an ingenious director. She used the restrictions that were on language and on what you could depict in movies to actually reinforce the point, you know, especially at that time, but let's be honest, still very much today, around how we talk or don't talk about sexual assault and sexual-based crimes. And she actually used that to her advantage, to add a layer of you know, the denial of truth to the film that I think is shows both her power as a filmmaker, but very much her interest in changing the culture and having us confront these sorts of issues head on, not in a way that is disguised. But this is a film very, very much in your face, as you said, about rape culture, and forces you into the position to have to confront it.
And this is in 1950 that
That's right.
that she's doing this. And there's a scene in Outrage where she uses sound so wonderfully. It's a scene where the young woman, after the attack, goes back to work. And it's the sound of the office and how she responds to that. That's quite brilliant in terms of depicting the environment that this woman now lives in.
And you know what I would say is it's a great scene, and I think exactly the type of scene that would require a woman to direct it, because you know I think this is the thing when we talk about representation in movies, is it's not that a man couldn't conceptualize that. It's that there's a nuance and an understanding and a depth of feeling that you can benefit when you truly understand those sorts of moments in life. And I think films like this are a reminder of why representation is so important. It's not just a leveling of the playing field. It's actually allowing us an art to give us more, to allow us a more nuanced, a more complete entry into subject matters and events and places and people. And I think she's a very great example of why representation truly does matter. Because, you know, Outrage, the movies she made, would not have existed without her. And I think that's really important, because so much of the other movies in the world, especially nowadays when it comes to Hollywood stuff, you know, they're going to exist regardless in many ways of the director. You know, they're big corporate properties, but these are movies, these are works of art that are very much to her, speak to her and her interests and her devotion to causes and equality, and wouldn't be here without her. And I think that's, you know, if you ever want a reason why she's an important artist, that's it.
I watch a film like The Bigamist, and her touch is all over that in terms of how she portrays the two women who are involved with this one man and the separate stories that come out. What's your take on The Bigamist?
I think what's interesting is how nuanced it is. You know,
yes.
It's very easy with a subject like bigamy to take a sort of black or white stance on it, and she does not. And she doesn't immediately vilify the man. She actually tries to understand, and she also tells the story, as you point out. Her stories are often about the reactions to things. It's not so much the events themselves. It's the aftermath or how people respond, and here it's the relationship of these two women to this one man. It's very much about them, and I think it's that she isn't so quick to judge, and I think that's again very interesting, because I wonder, Donna, if you could make this movie now. I don't think you could. I think you'd have to take a very hardline stance one way or another. And I think she allows for us as the audience to enter in a different way and not force an opinion upon us, while giving us enough for us to understand what's a really complicated issue. And again, I think that is a movie that is not made, certainly not made in that way, but almost certainly not even made by a man. I think yeah.
And she sets the tone from the beginning, where she draws you in, and you think, "Oh, is this a comedy?" Because there's, Edmund Gwynn, and there's Santa Claus from Miracle on 34th Street, and she references that film in The Bigamist. And then you're drawn into this world of the man with the two women, and it's very cleverly done. Even her ending is very clever and non-judgmental in a way.
No, absolutely, and she's quite sly in terms of the theme, or what the movie is about, creeps up on you. You're not totally, it is not an issue-driven film from the moment it starts. It isn't. It is by the end.
Yes,
but it doesn't start in that place. She often started in a melodrama sort of place, and then took you to the issue. And I think, and she was very character. She had a great respect for her characters, and I think she tried to draw really, for the most part, really fully fleshed people. I think maybe in a movie like The Hitchhiker, less so, but I think for her issue-oriented films, for sure, she did.
Yes, and you brought in The Hitchhiker, so I'm going to go to that next. Here you have a woman who's directing men in the desert, a rough and tumble situation. And it seems to me that she got along well with her cast. There didn't seem to be any notes about her as a director directing women.
No, not at all. I mean, again, this is a classic sort of gritty, hard-boiled noir type tale. A kidnapping crime movie, and no issues whatsoever. I think she was very much in command of her craft, and I think this movie in particular just shows the command she had of directing. There were not a lot of second takes or a lot of, her shooting percentage was quite low on this movie. She knew exactly what she wanted. If you look at the pacing of the film, how it builds tension, it's so wonderfully economic. It does everything so simple. It seems simple, but it really isn't simple. And it tells its story so effectively. This is a real sort of white knuckler type of movie, and of course exactly the type of movie I think expected of a male director. And yet I think here you have Lupino, who starred in many movies like this during her times as a movie star. Here she shows just complete command of a movie that one could easily be imagined being directed by Raoul Walsh or John Huston or any of the big sort of male directors of the time, and yet it's not. It's Ida Lupino. And I think, that movie's been restored by the Library and Archives of Congress, and that's the print we'll be showing. And I think for me, in many ways, that's a movie that shows the bridge. It's a callback to her time, the types of movies she made as an actor, but here she is behind the screen in full command of her craft, making a movie that I think holds up exceptionally well, even 60 some odd years later.
Yes, it does. And I love her camera work in this film, especially how she moves in and out of the car, because we have these three men stuck in the car for that's how they're sort of getting away to a destination. I won't go into more than that, but I love how her camera moves in and out of the car interior.
Yeah, an amazing sense of space, and that film was shot very quickly on a super low budget, and I think she uses that again all to her advantage. You know, it's not a grandiose movie; it's a very claustrophobic movie, and I think that helps. I think that's the atmosphere you want for a movie like that.
And you have to know what you're doing because she's moving from, from location shooting to studio. So you have to know exactly what you're getting in studio and what you plan to do on location.
Oh, absolutely. And again, these are movies she was financed. So there was not a lot of fat on the budget of these movies. She was an independent filmmaker at a time when we didn't really talk about independent filmmakers, and yet she was one. And so, absolutely, she was in completely command of all the sort of crafts of filmmaking as an actor and as a director. She was amazing at all of it.
And she wrote as well.
She did with Collier Young, who was at one point her husband, and she wrote the scripts as well. She was responding to the lack of these sorts of stories that she was seeing from the studios, and so when in doubt, create them yourselves. And I think that is what we've seen from pioneering people, marginalized people throughout sort of cinema history is when in doubt, we'll figure out a way to make it ourselves. And she was someone who saw a gap, saw a place where the industry wasn't responding to an audience. You have to remember at this time, and quite frankly, still today, Donna, women make up the majority of the movie-going audience. And yet the studios, I think much to their detriment, do not pay nearly as much attention to that audience as they should. And that is a historical, long-standing, for the entire history of Hollywood, problem, except you have moments where individuals like Lupino come along who really want to fill that gap. And she really did, both in movies for a time, and then when the filmmakers sort of ended and it was time to transition, that was really what she did on television as well.
She directed over 100 episodes of major TV shows.
It's amazing.
And I didn't do the research into this, but I don't think she's been recognized by the Academy with even a posthumous Oscar or anything, has she?
No, you're so right. I hadn't thought of that, and that now it does seem like an omission. I hope I'm standing on the shoulders of the work of a couple great women curators in the U.S., Barbara Shares and Ann Mora, who did a lot of work with Ida Lupino and her legacy for years, and it's great that Ann is going to actually come up to speak to one of the films, and we're able to show this. And hopefully, I think with work like theirs, hopefully this series can contribute a little bit of that. But I think we just need more awareness. I think one of the challenges with film history is that it is so male-dominated, and of course, it's typically men that get to tell the history. I myself here talking to you, and yet there are figures like this, and we need to make sure we bring them to light. And it is because as an actor, she was so often cast against the biggest stars of her generation. She's against Jean Gabin or Humphrey Bogart in several movies. And so she sometimes took a sort of a second place, but I think she deserves all the accolades that the Academy or anyone else could give her, and she absolutely deserves her rightful place in movie history because she was an extraordinary figure in film history.
Well, Jesse, thank you so much for shining the spotlight on Ida Lupino with us today. And I'll be in the audience when you introduce a couple of these films.
Oh, can't wait for it. Thank you so much, Donna.
Bye-bye, Jesse.
Bye.
And that was Jesse Wente talking about Ida Lupino, Independent Woman. The focus on that incredible woman runs until September 2nd at the TIFF Bell Lightbox. And I do have a pair of tickets to give away to the August 22nd, 6:30 p.m. screening of Hitchhiker, directed by Ida Lupino, co-written by Ida Lupino. And the number to call is 416-946-7000, 416-946-7000. And in keeping with the spirit of women, I'm going to actually let this go to women callers to see this hard-boiled gangster film. So 416-946-7000, 416-946-7000. Let's hear from some of the women out there. You're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM. This is Donna G back with you, the more the merrier. I'm here till 4 o'clock, and joining me by telephone right now is Sistah Lois, a.k.a. African Princess, a.k.a. heavy-duty diesel equipment mechanic, a.k.a. creatrix. And she's joining me by phone to talk about her own mother's love of Ida Lupino, who we talked about in the previous segment. Yes. Hello, Lois.
Hi, how you doing, DG?
I'm fine, sister. So your mother was an Ida Lupino fan.
Well, you know, my mom was born in 21, and Ida was 1919, you understand? So she wasn't much older than my mother, and movies were the only entertainment really outside of radio or community type events or that my mom really had access to as a young woman. So the films that were directed by women had women producing, women writing. All of these things seemed to have an interest to her. And I didn't even know at that time that, how should I say, that people who went to movies, unlike us who will just turn on our TV or Netflix or something, actually took more of an interest in where the material was coming from. I didn't know that until I watched these movies with my mom in the basement in Winnipeg, because those movies would be shown on late evening, and she didn't want to be in the basement alone, so my 9, 10, 11-year-old self was forced to sit, I thought at the time, to sit through Hitchhiker and The Trouble with the Nuns, and even The Bigamist, and these stories, not knowing what life's journeys were going to be for myself, but becoming interesting because my mother would say, she's not just an actor, you know, she directs in, and she did write some of this. She knew, and to her that was important, why it is we were watching these.
It's interesting that then you later became in life such an independent woman fighting for things. I mean, because you've been on my show and previous incarnations of my show, and you've talked about the difficult, not the work that you were doing as a diesel mechanic, but the environment that you were in that made it difficult for you to work as a woman.
I see a similarity there for sure. Not just that she was in the season of people being betrayed because of this McCarthyism. I was in a place where I was betrayed by my anatomy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that the few other women in this place were different to me in that they were not tradespersons. So I was more of a threat because I was a tradesperson. Also because I think I thought a lot like my mother, which was whatever's on the surface, dig, there's got to be more. And I encountered many people at Canadian National Railway who started on the railway at 14 and had been given the label machinist and never went any further and will retire there, whereas I had come in with another set of education previously and wanted to know as much as I could about these machines. And so I was forever going back to school to augment my knowledge and not being aware that my augmenting of knowledge was the biggest threat.
Mm-hmm.
If you have only one or two things you can do and someone comes in and suddenly they want to do 3, 4, 5, 6 things, you are a threat. So I can imagine what Ida went through. You know, she could sing, she could dance, she could do everything.
Right. And which you did at work. You sang at work and got in trouble for singing at work.
Well, look at that. You know, music can save your life, right? And I see I'm harkening back to Ida again when she sang Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. There was so much deflection in that show and that particular movie and how that song was used. I used music because life can get in your eyes. People can use what they think is an established, known thing to get in your way, and there's a thing such as non-traditional work. So the very fact that I was in there with the carbon under my nails and the hard hat and the shoes and crawling under engines, fixing wheels, and even sometimes the sad task of cleaning brains off of the fronts of trains, because that stuff happens too.
Mm-hmm.
It leaves you in a well, you know there's more than one thing, and you want to get to the bottom of things. And so the world there is, you're only allowed this much. There's a ceiling. There's an amount you're allowed to dig into. And I always wanted to know what was at the bottom of things. And that got me into a lot of trouble. When I got in that trouble, which was not so much, I was taken to the office. The trouble I'm talking about is people would molest me, because the men, it seemed, the males there, when you would be in a situation where you're feeling threatened, and they'd go out and size each other up and punch each other in the face or have some sort of loud cussing out, with me it was grab a genitalia, squeeze the body, put me in my you are nothing but a sexing place. I use song. That's when I would sing all the songs from all those old-time movies, because they knew them too. And it was my attempt to fawn, basically, in a situation where I wasn't going to fly. I had to accept my situation. I worked there. There was no fighting for me. They were big men. So song became my ultimate weapon. And then, of course, their ultimate weapon was to say you're not allowed to sing. If we hear a peep from you, your job is in threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, of course, you know the resulting factor of that. If I'm not allowed to sing, I can't stop my brain from working. Engines tell music. Engines are music. Every crankshaft and camshaft, every connecting rod, every tappet, everything is moving. They're moving parts. Moving parts make music. So my not being allowed to sing along created a songwriter.
Exactly. And not only a songwriter, but it enabled you to move on to other things like your chorale, which included everyone, because you were able to make music out of these sounds. So you had a non-rehearsal, non-audition chorale where people could just come and share their love of music.
Well, you know, as I said about the engine, every sound. Something falls, a pot cover falls in your kitchen. If you let it roll long enough, it will sing you a song. You drop a token in the subway, and the echoing, it sings songs. And many people have been taught, if you're not able to do it like, you know, some official singer, then hush up. And because of that, they hesitate to give themselves the pleasure of song. Because song is not just a pleasurable thing, it is your inalienable right. You have all the parts. So sing out, but people have been policed, just like we have fashion police and hair police and all these things. There's music police, and people have been told, you ain't no singer, hush.
Yeah.
And so I decided
Exactly.
I was going to make a choir for people who all they could do was maybe count 1, 2, 3, 4 and make the sound on time, or and put that cough in a song.
Yeah, in this world, it's being independent is always striving against those people who want you silenced.
Always. And not just silenced, want you under the umbrella of the group.
Yes.
Because the umbrella of the group is akin to silence. Once you're under the umbrella, there is an unspoken acquiescence to their behavior.
And you've managed to survive this year after year after year. And one of the things that I admire about artists in general is their ability to keep going, because this is part of what they do, is part of them, and they have to express. But it takes courage to keep going. How do you keep going?
For it in cognitive behavior. I can't remember the word, but there's a word that basically says, well, you don't have choices, just accept it. You understand? And in that acceptance, you recognize that it's not a just situation. It is a platform for all kinds of possible possibilities. You understand?
Yeah.
That thing that you say, okay, I resign myself to, doesn't mean you lay down there. You see that as, okay, that's my new starting point.
Exactly, the new starting point.
I tried to share that concept with someone the other day that I was teaching some sight singing to, and they were saying to me, okay, I get do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, but when I look at something in the key of F, how do I do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? I say the same way. You know, do, re, mi, fa. So if fa is the F, then move it up in your head, and now that fa is do. So you're starting from there. Do, re, mi, fa, sol. And she said, I said, yeah, music is life. You just have to adjust yourself. And all of these keys are just about adjusting yourself. It's the one thing. Everything is still going to be the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There's only one dance.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've had a busy year. You've been auditioning because you also act. You've been in movies. You do voiceovers.
We do all kinds of exciting things now because of being squeezed in that room and told I wasn't allowed to sing. I wrote songs. I wrote songs and held on to the fusion that is me. I came up a little girl being taught classical style. I went away to study music, and I chose gospel to study, and then came back here and was told, oh, you're too blues and jazz for the church. So had to leave that, arrived in Toronto and was told I sound too white for Toronto. So I had to learn about reggae and blues and jazz, and then started to write calypso. And because of calypso, someone saw me and said, you sing those songs like you're an actor. I said, well, you know, I always feel like you could be anything if you just try. And I tried, and I try every time I go for an audition. I sometimes feel like, I'm probably taking a job away from someone who trained for years to be an actor. And I said, but you know, I've trained for years to be me, and that's a lot of time in. And if I get the job, I don't have any sympathy for that person. It's just that I got the job. Because I realize in this business, doesn't matter how much you put in at the beginning or how much you have plans to put in at the end, everything can turn on a dime. Life can turn on a dime, and you have to transpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's no longer in C. What you going to do?
So, do you have any music you can share with me this afternoon?
You know, my favorite key comes from another story in my life. My favorite key is F. Not because of the B flat. My favorite key is because though I came up with my parents and grandparents teaching me solfège, I didn't have a formal piano lesson until university. So I was very, very excited for my son at age 6 to start piano lessons, and I didn't realize he had perfect pitch and that he was able to transpose and that he didn't really pay attention to the teacher until the next lesson when she asked him to repeat what he'd been given, and he added the accidental and played the thing in F. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said, does he realize he transposed? And so we asked him, and yeah, he knew he transposed. He just thought C was boring. He understood that already, and it was time to use one of those black notes.
To use one of those black notes.
That's what he said. It's time to use one of those black notes, mommy. So I'm that black note, and I want to use myself up. and I started writing a music that again fought against the normal, whatever norm is. I love the feel of gospel because I studied gospel, but gospel people don't like me because I'm not into God and Jesus. But I figure there's all kinds of good news. And just like that, Ida approached topics that people don't like to talk about. I sing about the good news of healing from child abuse, from the good news of healing from workplace abuse, from the good news of just going through each and every day, and about the different stepping stone experiences you can have. I had a wonderful stepping stone experiences that has lingering parts of my personality when I walked with people of Rastafari. They came to find me. They saw this locked girl who understood the Aishan, already spoke in biblical ways, and said, "You're one of us." And when my mother saw me with them, she said, "You know, you've been different since you're little. I'm glad you find some people that are like you." But if my mom were alive now, she'd see that I am still evolving, and that many of the rules and regulations under the umbrella that is called Rastafari do not suit me.
Mm-hmm. Because you're an independent woman.
I'm an independent woman. Plus, I was taught classical music, and I love a rhapsody. I like the idea of a reoccurring theme. And the reoccurring themes in our world are that women are hurt and blanket solutions are given out. Mm-hmm. And we need to wheel ourselves up and start again as women. And so I created a style of music called Raspel Raps So Deep, meaning just what it says. Really accessible song. That's what my RAS stands for. And pull, because it's good news. It's sometimes rapped and sometimes sung, but it's always deeper than what you first hear. You need to pay some attention when Sister sings a song.
So, Sister, we only have a couple of minutes, so
you
let's...
want to hear a couple of lines or something?
A couple of lines, and
okay.
that's all we've got time
that's all
for.
we got time for.
Go ahead.
When you wake up, it'll be all right. As the sun was setting, just going down, well, I got up to pay. These were my sad times, my hard, lonely, dark times. And this was a challenge for me to face. So I turned on some music with the lyrics of hope. A message of love was coming through strong. You just hang on in there, girl. Tire of pop, it won't be long. It'll be all right when your morning comes. And everybody's morning comes at a different time. Your morning coming is when you wake up to your reality. And so the song goes on to say, why should I worry? Why should I fret? Why take time out to pace? The next verse sings about when each new day is dawning and birds rise up to sing. And even if birds don't sing, I still drop to my knees. And I pray not to any entity, but to the power that woke me up this morning. And I pray for patience and kindness and every high meditation that it will take to scale the mountains of each day. We all have mountains that we scale every day. And now I give thanks because I've been given music. I'm writing lyrics of hope. I hope my message of love comes on real strong. You just hang on in there, girl. Do whatever it takes. Tie a rope up, it won't be long. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. Whenever your morning comes, be all right. When you wake up, it'll be
And that is Sistah Lois that you're listening to here on CIUT 89.5 FM.
In my living room, baby. All right.
And Sistah, thank you so much for joining me today and
so much
for
fun.
sharing.
I want to say, ring them phones, people. Don't wait for fundraising. Support the shows you like all year round.
Definitely. And they can do that at www.ciut.fm.
Aren't I good? I just said that to you. I love it.
Thanks.
All right. Hail up, people. Omni love.
Bye. And that was Sistah Lois sharing her mother's love of Ida Lupino and the influence that it had on her, and sharing some of her journey in life as a creatrix. Now, the Ida Lupino retrospective at the TIFF Bell Lightbox, as I said earlier during my interview to Jesse, if you missed it, it runs until September 2nd. It would be great if women went out in droves and supported Ida Lupino the way they did the recent opening of Wonder Woman, because Ida Lupino was indeed a Wonder Woman of screen and television and writing and so much more. You can find out more information about the retrospective at www.tiff.net. You can phone for tickets at 416-599-8433 and find out all the information. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Donna G. The show is The More the Merrier, and you're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM. I want to thank Winnie for calling in for those tickets to The Hitchhiker that is directed and co-written by Ida Lupino. I'll be back next Monday between 3 and 4 p.m. where the focus will be the Summerworks Theater Festival. Bye-bye.